Alright guys, now we're going to take a look at some of the effects of immigration during this time period. By 1907 you'd had 1.3 million immigrants had arrived in the United States, and 80% of them were coming from Southern and Eastern Europe, and they didn't speak English or French or German or any other Western language. You also saw immigration from Asia increase during this time period. And they were leaving because of economic troubles, ethnic discrimination, and they were coming to the U.S. to stay. They saw this as a land of opportunity, and you see the changes that are happening here with this graph. The problem that we're seeing is this sort of contributes to some of the problems that we were talking about with the city in our last lecture as immigrants come in there. But the journey to America was a fairly long one. Across the Pacific it was 60 days, across the Atlantic 12 days, and the immigrants, they traveled in steerage, in these cramped compartments in the lower decks. But when they arrived at the United States, they saw the Statue of Liberty for the first time, and this was a symbol of hope for those immigrants.
Interpreter. Where are you from? What is your name? What is your name?
Come on, son. What is your name?
Tuo nome? Vito Andolini from Corleone.
Corleone. Vito Corleone.
Okay. Over there. Next. Your name.
Tell him he has smallpox, quarantine 3 months.
Il dottore ha detto che hai il vaiolo, devi andare per 3 mesi in quarantena all'isola Ellis.
There he is. This is him.
Here you see an example of the steerage compartments that they would travel in on those ships as they cross the Atlantic and Pacific. As you see there, they see the Statue of Liberty, and then they would arrive here at Ellis Island, the processing center. And they would stand in these lines and wait for days sometimes to be processed through. They would have a medical exam. The that they had to undergo so that they could be checked for any possible diseases. And if they had any of those things, their clothes would be tagged with the symbols that you see here on their clothing. And sometimes they might not be allowed into the United States. You might even be sent back. Sometimes you might have to stay on the island until you were disease-free. And the Angel Island was the Pacific Reception Center. When they arrived in the United States, they had to go find work. So you had organizations in their home countries gathering unskilled labor. The industrial jobs would hire them, as well as women and children, because they would work for less money. When they got to the United States, most wanted to assimilate. They wanted to become part of the larger culture, and the children tended to assimilate faster because they learned English faster and they were in schools. But they also wanted to protect their heritage to a degree, and so it was an interesting dynamic. The women enjoyed the increased freedom in the United States as well, but there were people who often blamed the immigrants for taking their jobs. They were blamed for crime. Some were physically attacked as well, and people saw this as maybe this group of new immigrants weren't going to be welcome in the United States. And so you have people putting out political cartoons like this one you see here, who point out all of these problems that immigrants bring with them as they come to the United States. Then in 1882, the United States passes the Chinese Exclusion Act, banning Chinese immigration to the United States. And they extended that in 1892 and in 1902. In 1917, they required immigrants to be able to read and write in some language. Thanks, guys, for paying attention. Hopefully we took good notes.